Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're working with a new unit now, roof framing, and since it's a new unit, here we are back inside my shop. Uh, what I'm going to go through on this video is laying out rafters. Uh, I'll detail one method in this video. The next video, I'm going to do a different method. You pick which one is, that speaks to you and it's easy for you to do, and you get the tools and you can make it happen. Um, Following videos after this, I'll be laying out and um, cutting rafters, and then on the project shed out here, I'll be putting them up. And so we'll put together the ridge beam, the rafters, the fly rafters, the lookouts, the subfascia, sheathing, all that's going on. And I also have some special videos for y'all that were filmed at an active job site. So they're short little videos I'll put in here and there. So it's cool stuff. So without further ado, let's get going here. Oh, by the way, you will need a piece of paper. You will need a pencil or a pen. I'm going to be asking you several questions during this video. Write those down, take a photo of them, submit them, and that's how you're going to get credit for this assignment. So here we go. In my last video where I did the presentation, I went through 3 different methods. You can use Pythagorean theorem and a calculator and a speed square, and you can lay out a rafter. It's a little bit more in depth, as some people get confused with that. So I'm going to start by showing you how to work with a framing square and do what's called the step down method, where literally you set the square at the right angle and you step down however many sets you need to go across that run, and you'll have the right size here. So some things that you're going to need to know, and some tools that you're going to need to have. You're going to need, obviously, going to have a framing square if you're going to lay out with a framing square. It could be done with some other squares, but it's just not as easy. This is the best tool for the job. Quick things about this framing square here. It's 16 inches on this side. This is the short side. This is known as the tongue. It's narrow, 16 inches from outside to outside. Okay? Inch markings are on the outside of this and inside of it as well. Then you have the long side. This is known as the blade. It is 24 inches long from the corner to the end. It is a little bit wider in here to help you, stay rigid and makes everything right. And it also has your ruler measurements on the outside and the inside. Now, quick note: if you are doing this method, what you're going to have to do is pull 2 measurements from the same side of the square. Like you could do from the outside and outside, or you could do from the inside and inside, but you can't do from the inside of one and the outside of the other. Okay, it's going to screw up your measurements. So inside and inside, or outside and outside. Think about that. The other thing you're going to need to know is the run and the unit triangle. So you need 2 terms. We've talked about these in my video. We need the run and the unit triangle. So on my board here, I drew up a quick little triangle for a house. Like, let's say that this is the roof side. This is what kind of a roof? We went over this a couple videos ago. Yes, it's a gable roof. Got 2 slopes meeting at a center ridge. Okay, bueno. So it's a gable roof there. Now, you've got one slope coming up, one slope coming down, and then these dotted lines here, that represents the rise of the roof. So here's your rise. That's basically from the top plate up to the peak of the roof. How tall is it going to be? And that's your rise. Now, the distance from one side of your roof to the other side of the roof, more specifically to the outside of one exterior wall to the outside of the other exterior wall. That's what's known as the span. So if you look at my shop here, okay, you can see this wall and you can see that wall. That's a 16-foot span. Okay, so if this was my shop, it would measure 16 feet from here all the way over to here. outside wall to outside wall. Now, I don't need to know the span. I need to know the run, which is different. Luckily for us, in most cases, especially when you're working with a gable roof, most cases your run is half of your span. So you take whatever your span measurement is, divide that by 2, and you get your run. So if this was 16 feet and I wanted to know what my run was, 16 divided by 2 is what? 8 feet. So my run would be 8 from the center of the ridge to the outside of my wall. Now, so I know my run is 8. And then I'm going to need to know my unit triangle. And the unit triangle can be found on your plans. Sometimes it's in a set of plans in the details in the specifications. Um, Other times it's actually printed on the elevation page of your drawings. And remember, the elevation is the picture of what the house looks like from the outside. When it's complete and you stand in the front yard, what does it look like? Now, if let's say your gable roof runs across the front of your house and you don't see any triangles like this when you're at the front of the house, you need to look at a different elevation, which would be one of the sides of the house. So you go to the side and you're going to see a picture, you're going to see that this edge of your house, and then they're going to have a little triangle that looks like this. Now they might also have something that's a little bit different. And I alluded to this in my video. They might have a line over and then a line down with the 2 numbers beside there. So it could be a triangle like this. It's inverted. Doesn't look like your roof. It's like the flip side of your roof. It's inverted like this, and it's got, like, let's say this one here is 12 on the top, 12 on the side. That represents your rise and run. And if this is the case here, 12. So either way, this is your unit triangle. This tells you how many inches you go up compared to how many inches you go over. And we talked about this in our, I explained this in the presentation video that you watched for this video. So rise over run, and again, that should be familiar to you if you think back to your geometry classes. You know, rise over run is how you can find the slope and the angle when you're looking at graphs, when you're looking at different triangles and geometries and areas and yada yada yada. In this case, this is the practical application of learning that. So if you're sitting there thinking, like, why am I ever going to need this? Bingo, bango, boomo, you have it here. Okay. And I really hope y'all watch this video because I'm having fun making this one. So I'm feeling upbeat and lively. All right, so let's get this going here. So again, this is just mainly clean this off of here. We won't need these marks past my remarks. Question number 1. Hey, what's the difference between slope and run? Okay, what's the difference between no, not slope and run, span and run? What's the difference between span and run? That's your question number 1 before we move on. Get down on a piece of paper. Span is this. Run is this. I'll give you the right answer. Okay, here we go. So I've got some specs for this rafter. This is just a piece of whiteboard here. This represents. I'm going to do the same thing I would do on an actual 2x8 rafter if I was cutting a 2x8 rafter. So we're good here. All right, so I have a couple things, a couple specs here. My roof unit triangle is 412. Okay, 412. Now, oftentimes it's going to be 12 over 4 when you look at your unit triangle, but it's the vertical part is rise, horizontal part is your run. So 412 is my slope, and that's my unit triangle, and I have a 10-foot span. Okay, but remember, I don't need the span. I need to know what the run is. So I take 10, divide it by 2, I get 5. All right. So working with this framing square here, I always like to start on the outside square. It's just the way I do it. Actually, you know what? I might work on the inside today because it is a lower slope roof, it'll be a little bit easier to hold this in place, a little bit more balanced. So here's the deal. I'm going to start from the inside corner here. This is my 0 point, so I'm going to come up 5 inches. And where my 5-inch mark is here, I'm going to hold that on the top edge of my uh, board. And then I'm going to come out this way, and I'm going to get that 12-inch mark and put that on the top edge of my board here. So here's, I've got my 12, and I've got my, whoop, I almost have my 5 and 12. Okay, so this smaller part right here, this is my unit triangle. Okay, this is one unit that would basically divide equally into this rafter. So my rise, or my run is going to be 5 feet, but if you break that down, 5 feet every 12 inches is 1 foot. So for every 12 inches I come over, I'm going to come up 5 inches. That's why we call it the 512. 512, rise over run. Right? So this sets up my unit triangle. Remember what I was talking about with the other one is when we're doing Pythagorean theorem, you want to figure out what the measurement between here and here is, and you can multiply that by your run. And then it skips you having to step down on this. But again, to each his own, however you guys want to do this here. All right, so I'm going to set this up at 5. I'm going to set this up at 12. And this gives me my unit thing. So I'm going to slide down to the end of this board here. And I'm going to start with the plumb cut. Now, the plumb cut is a vertical cut, and it goes up against your ridge board. So that's what's going to go up against your. I always start there. You can work backwards, starting at tail cut, working up, but it's much easier to go from ridge board down. So, before I get too ahead of myself here, question number 2. What is the unit triangle? Question number 2. What is the unit triangle? Okay, what did I say it represents? All right. Write that down. Yada, yada, yada. Pause the video if you need to. All right, I'm back in it here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to slide this down. You want to start close to the end of your board, especially if you think you're going to be close by the time you get down to your tail cut. You don't want to lay your whole rafter out and then discover, oh man, I'm 6 inches short, and it ain't gonna work. So start near the top end of your board. Also crown all your lumber before you do this. If you have a crown where it's going down and you're straightening at the top of the rafter, it's not good. Talk more about that in the other instructional videos. All right, so I'm going to set this back up, and I'm going to have my 5-inch mark here. I'm going to have my 12-inch mark here. And again, I'm just lining up those 2 points right as it crosses the top edge of my board. Then I'm going to take my marker or your pencil or pen, and I'm going to put a mark along the tongue here. Okay? This is my plumb cut. I'm going to put a P. That does not stand for politically correct. It stands for plumb cut. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yeah, you can't get my computer up here. I can see what you guys can see. So it's my plumb cut, the 512 plumb cut. Now what I'm going to do is, I shouldn't have moved my square. I had it perfect. Okay, 5 and 12. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a line at the bottom of this. It's basically from inches 11 to 12. I'm going to make a line coming over. And this is just to mark the position that my square was before I move it. So I just made a little mark right there. Okay, right here. So this was one unit. Now, some people when they do this, they trace the whole thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like with this next one here. But essentially now I maneuver my square and I come down and I reset the exact same unit triangle, 5 and 12, right on that same point. Like I said, some people will trace down and then trace over, okay? And lo and behold, right over here is where my next step is. So what's our rise? Our rise is 5. So I've had 1, there's my second step, and for each one run you have, you're going to do 1 step. So another 5 and 12. Okay. Is that a 3? I'm doing this stuff upside down. It's kind of tough to do. It makes you think sometimes. All right. 5, 12 again. Boom. There's step 4. And last step. Okay. 5. All right. So I have, and again, this will go across there. Okay. So we've got step number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this gets us, so basically, this is how long, it's almost how long our rafter is going to be from that end to here. Now, I'm not done because I'm going to have to make the bird's mouth cut. Now, the bird's mouth cut, um, there's a little bit of trickery involved in this, but it's not as difficult as one might assume. So you step down as many steps as you're going to make, okay? And then you're going to make one more unit triangle, okay? So 5 and 12. Only this time we aren't marking all the way across, but go ahead and look at what your overhang is going to be. In most cases, you're going to have a 12-inch overhang. That's the part of the roof that sticks out over the exterior wall, so water can just run off into your gutters or just and not go down the side wall. Um, so if it's 12-inch, you can go ahead and you can make that mark there. So you can just put a little mark down here. Um, so you have your, this is coming down for thing. Now, you notice this only goes down to 5 inches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my square on here, and I'm going to extend it the rest of the way down. Now, this is the point where your exterior wall is going to sit in here, but we have to notch it so it sits correct. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to have like a very small place to actually attach it. So we've got to have it available to be attached and to be attached strongly, securely. Because remember, you don't want a tornado ripping the roof off your house. So here's what we're going to do. The average wall, especially around here in South Carolina, is going to be a 2x4 wall. So remember, it is 1.5 inches. 2x4 is 1.5 inches deep, 3.5 inches wide. So common practice is to take this and I'm going to actually flip my square and I'm going to flip it back this way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up with my mark of here's essentially this is not a full plumb cut. It is, but it's a plumb line along here. So I'm going to put it along my plumb line and then I'm going to slide my square up or down the rafter until the 3.5 inch mark hits the bottom of this. It's the bottom of the rafter here. Okay. 3.5. Okay, so now I have a little notch right there, and I'm going to put an X here because that's what's getting cut out. I'm going to just do a dip, dip, dash deal here so we know that we do not cut this. Oftentimes I'll scribble that out so it's not cut. Now, we've got the bird's mouth, which would be bird's mouth. All right, the bird's mouth cut is down here. I'm going to cut in on those. Now, cutting bird's mouths are a little bit tricky. I will talk to you guys about that in my next video. Okay, so now my overhang is 12 inches. So remember, I marked that on when I was marking this plumb line here. So I know where my square needs to sit. So it's one more 512 that you get set up. And you go ahead and draw this all the way down and across. And here, my tail cut. All right, marker cap, marker cap, marker cap. Oh, it's all the way over there. Okay, let me put this back here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so essentially, if this sawhorse was my top plate and I cut this out, it would drop down in there and it would sit. It would sit hopefully as flush as possible along the horizontal part of this bird's mouth cut. You don't want them like angled up like this and where only the front side of it's touching. You want it to be as smooth as possible. And all this can be adjusted in the cut. I'll talk about that in the video. It would sit up like this and it would come up and it would be roughly an angle like that. So that's about a 512 slope. Now, there's one more piece of information that you need to know before you start cutting. This plumb cut here is to the center of your ridge board. It is not to the side of your ridge board. So what you're going to have to do is move your plumb cut in. Don't shift all your measurements down. No, you do this, and then you come back and you cut off half the thickness of your ridge board. And you do that simply by using your square, lining it up with your plumb cut line. Put a mark at 3/4 of an inch. Because in most cases, you're going to be using a 2x10, 2x12 ridge board, or some type of a 2x ridge board. Once you have that, then you set up another 512, slide it over, put it on your mark. Okay, so that's the one I actually cut. I'm going to erase parts of this other one, make it a dashed line. So that the dashed line is theoretical length. Solid line is your actual cut length. And each of these step downs, this is 1 unit of run, 2 units, 3, 4, 5 units of run. That gets me to the side of my board. I came down, found my bird's mouth cut. Remember, this horizontal part's 3.5 inches. Now, if you're dealing with a 5.5 inch wall, which is 2x6, you're going to want to make that 5.5 inches across instead of 3.5 inches, maybe 5.5. Then I measured over and found my tail cut. So this is the step down method. Now, you get the hang of this, and you're not trying to teach somebody. It goes pretty quick as you're going through this, but it's a pretty straightforward method if you just remember the steps. And the steps are: number one, mark your plumb cut, set up your rafter, and then on whatever your unit triangle is, and mark it, step down, mark it, step down, step down, step down. And so you step down 1 step per run, or 1 step per 1 run. That's step number 2. 3 is measure down, mark out your bird's mouth. 4 is lay out your even overhang. And then 5 is mark the tail cut. I guess you could really say your overhang and tail cut are all kind of the same steps. So it's like 4 steps. And and that gets you the square there. Okay, third question, last question for you is which cuts are vertical and which cut is notched? And there's two vertical cuts when you're actually cutting this stuff out, and one of them that's going to be a notch cut. All right, answer that question. When you have that done, go ahead and go back to Canvas and submit your assignment. Okay, next video, I'm going to ditch the ditch the framing square, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to pick up the speed square and rafter table book. A lot faster. It's pretty neat stuff here. A lot less math is involved. As long as you can read a chart, you can mark out a rafter. All right, we will see you in the next video. Have a good evening.